It was a small town that smelled of rust and rain, a place where dreams often drowned before they could ever learn to breathe. Every morning, 16-year-old Eli Turner would walk past the abandoned airstrip on his way to school. The cracked runway stretched into the horizon, a scar of forgotten glory. Old weeds grew through the concrete, and a broken sign still read, "Skyfield Air Base, reach beyond the clouds." Eli used to stop there every day, stand at the edge, and close his eyes. In his mind, he could hear the echo of engines, feel the wind rushing past his face, and see himself soaring above the world, free, limitless, untouchable. But then reality always whispered, "You're the son of a mechanic. You fix engines, you don't fly them." Eli's father, Mark Turner, worked long nights repairing farm trucks in their small garage. Life wasn't cruel, just tight. Money went where it had to, rent, gas, and keeping the lights from flickering out. "Dreams are beautiful, son," Mark used to say, "but they don't fill the fridge." Eli would nod, but something inside him resisted, a quiet rebellion against the gravity that held everyone in that town down. One rainy afternoon, Eli found an old airplane manual at a thrift store, 50 cents, pages yellowed and torn. He read it under his blanket every night, tracing diagrams with his fingers, learning how wings worked, how lift was created by the difference in pressure. He didn't just want to fly, he wanted to understand flight, the science, the spirit, the poetry of it. At school, people laughed. Dreaming to be a pilot? They'd smirk. With what? Paper wings? Eli smiled. Maybe, he'd say, but even paper can rise if the wind is strong enough. The first real chance came unexpectedly. A retired pilot named Mr. Hawkins moved into the old farmhouse near the airstrip. Rumor had it he once flew fighter jets. One evening, Eli saw him working on a rusted plane in the barn, an old Cessna, its wings covered in dust and cobwebs. Curiosity dragged Eli closer. "Need a hand, sir?" he asked shyly. The man looked up, his weathered face half hidden under a cap. "You know anything about planes?" "A little," Eli said, "mostly from books." Mr. Hawkins smirked. "Then maybe it's time you learn from metal instead of paper." And that's how it began. Every evening after school, Eli biked to the barn. Together, they cleaned, welded, and rebuilt the old plane piece by piece. As they worked, Hawkins talked, not just about flying, but about courage. "Most people live on the ground because it's safe," he said. "But the sky doesn't belong to those who play safe. It belongs to those who trust their wings, even when they're shaking." Eli listened. Every word became a seed planted deep inside his soul. The day the engine finally roared back to life, Eli felt his heart tremble. The sound was pure magic, like the universe whispering, "Now." Hawkins climbed into the cockpit and motioned for Eli to join him. "Ready?" Eli hesitated. I can't. My dad, he wouldn't understand." The old man looked at him for a long moment. "Son, if you wait for the world to understand your dreams, you'll wait forever." That night, Eli told his father everything, about the plane, the lessons, the dream. Mark didn't speak for a long time. Finally, he sighed, his hands still stained with grease. "You really think you can do this?" Eli met his eyes. "I don't think, Dad. I know." Something softened in Mark's expression, a mix of pride and fear. "Then promise me one thing," he said quietly. "If you're going to chase the sky, don't ever stop halfway." Eli nodded. The next morning was crisp and clear, the kind of morning when the sky feels close enough to touch. Eli stood beside the plane, heart pounding. Hawkins adjusted the controls and Smythe led. "Today, you take the stick." "Me?" "Dreams don't wait, Eli. You shouldn't either." With trembling hands, Eli climbed in. The runway stretched ahead, long, cracked, endless. His reflection stared back from the dusty windshield, a boy who had dared to believe. The engine hummed, the plane rolled forward, the ground began to blur, and then, it happened. The weight of the world fell away. The earth shrank beneath him. The sky opened like a secret finally told. Eli Turner, the mechanic's son, the boy of paper wings, was flying. They circled the fields below. The rooftops, the cars, even the tiny airstrip. Everything that once felt so heavy looked small now. And in that endless blue, Eli understood something profound. Dreams aren't about escaping the ground. They're about changing how you see it. When they landed, Hawkins turned to him. "You've got the gift, kid. But more than that, you've got the fire." Eli smiled, but deep down, he knew the fire was only beginning to burn. The years that followed weren't easy. Flight school applications, rejections, money struggles, everything tested him. He worked nights at the same garage as his father, saving every dollar, every ounce of energy. Sometimes he wanted to quit, but every time he passed that old airstrip, he remembered the feeling, that first moment when the ground let go, and he kept going. 10 years later, the small town gathered outside again, this time not for gossip or small talk, but for something that would be remembered for decades. The news had spread fast. Captain Eli Turner, the youngest pilot to lead a cross-continental rescue mission, was returning home, landing right where his dream had begun. As the sound of engines filled the sky, the townspeople looked up in awe. The same boy they once mocked was now flying a plane that carried hope itself. Eli stepped out of the cockpit in his crisp uniform. His father, older now, stood waiting. No words were needed. Mark simply placed his hand on his son's shoulder and whispered, "You didn't stop halfway." Eli smiled, eyes glistening. "Nang. I never could, Dad. You taught me how to build engines, and he taught me how to use them." They both looked up, at the sky, endless and eternal. Years later, when Eli was invited to speak to a group of students, he stood on a stage looking at the young faces before him, faces full of dreams, fears, and uncertainty. He told them about Skyfield, about the rusted airstrip, about being laughed at for dreaming too big. And then he said something that silenced the room. "Dreams are like wings. They're useless until you dare to open them. The world will tell you that you can't fly, that your sky is too high, that your wings are too small. But they don't know your wind. The size of your dream doesn't matter. What matters is the size of your belief." He paused, looking up as if speaking to the heavens. "I was a boy who wanted to touch the sky. And I did. Not because I was born to fly, but because I refused to stay on the ground." Moral is, dreaming big isn't about reaching higher than others. It's about reaching further than your fear. Because the sky doesn't belong to those who wish. It belongs to those who believe enough to rise.